All right, and welcome to episode 49 of Enterprise Minds. We're going to have to figure out what to do for 50 because that's a pretty big milestone. But yeah, we've got a couple of exciting bits before we jump in. Ruthi is back from the Adobe Summit, not just in the crowd, but also on the stage. Presenting out what she's been doing and kicking ass, taking names. And then on the self-promotion side, I got a couple of speaking gigs coming up too. If you're in the Twin Cities area, there's one at the University of St. Thomas coming up. So go over to LinkedIn. In the description, you will find links to that and get more information as I'm able to say more on that. So, Alex, you owe us a speaking gig.
Yeah, apparently
on your to-do list.
And, got my Kanban right here. I'll add it. Don't worry.
So, yeah, with that, Alex did, in fact, bring topics because Ruthi and I were too busy with the speaking gigs to come up with any.
Somebody has to do this, man.
So why don't you cue up what we're going to talk about today?
Sure. It's come up a number of times over the last month, and I keep seeing different kind of examples of it, and I've been trying to get a kind of my hands around it. I like analogies, but themes work well enough. And really what it is basically humanity as a value prop. Basically, there's a number of different situations. One of them was basically, as we were talking about, AI agents and basically where they're capable and where they're not capable. And really the limits on that would be greater context. So their knowledge of your life, their knowledge of the situation that you might be asking about. For instance, I'm looking for a family vacation. I don't care where. Is very different than this is the flight, book me 3 tickets, 2 adults, 2 kids, here's all the information.
Right.
That's a very different ask. Like one of them requires much greater context and the other one doesn't. Even to the point of knowing what kind of budgets I would typically have instead of just throwing out, Fiji as well as someplace 10 minutes drive from me or something. It's there's context here that's missing.
Right.
Which is very different than a human conversation, to cut you off. Or
God forbid you have a VPN and it thinks you're in Istanbul and you do the restaurants near me and you're like, what? No.
Yeah, I get that pretty frequently. I run a VPN on my phone and it's never
quite useful.
No. And then the other one was more of a business side of things, of looking at e-commerce and complex B2B buys, as well as even individual consumer buys. I've seen recently basically of individuals who are buying particular products. They bought them online. They sold themselves basically online. The problem is that product actually requires a few other products to make it work. So now they're annoyed. They didn't know the other things. I mean, yeah, you could put recommended products. You could try to help some of the body copy or something like that. But honestly, a real quick conversation with a salesperson would have actually covered all that, which I realize is not an ideal scenario. So it's there's this weird kind of push and pull there. You don't want to have the sales call. However, you don't know whether or not there's a level of complexity there or not because you're new, you're buying the product, you're the consumer, you're the customer. You don't know all the things that the business would know.
Right.
But at the same time, a human conversation would have covered that in 5 minutes or said, no, you don't actually need this thing that you're talking about. You need a cheaper version. Nobody needs this other one. I mean, you're talking something else. Or this product won't even work for you because you think it does based on these things. But because of these other things that I know about from my expertise that I'll ask you about, oh, no, you don't have those things, then you actually need something completely different. That is such a complex aspect of e-commerce kind of falls apart. So does AI play a part there? Is it just a failure of e-commerce needs to be better? Or how do you meet in the middle between the massive scale that is digital and the very personable, context-driven relationships that we have as humans? And I keep struggling with that. And I just keep seeing examples of, we go really, really hard into the digital side. Well, that's great, but that's really myopic. Like, we just never seem to get the full context. And then we go too far on the humanity side, and it's like, well, that doesn't scale. Like, and it's not available 24/7. Like, I don't know. So that's kind of where I'm struggling.
Ruthie, do you have a hot take on this, or?
Well, I don't know if it's a hot take, but the analogy that just popped to my mind towards the end there was this idea of, okay, so you're going traveling, and I think of there being sort of three categories of ways that you can travel to a completely new place. The first one is, you do your research ahead of time and you sort of book the things that you want to do. Are they more likely to be the touristy things? Sure. But you can do a lot of online research and you can sort of figure it out yourself. That's sort of on one end. On the other end, you have, I know a guy who lives there, who's going to show me around, who's going to show me the local restaurants, who's going to show me the spots. And I'm really going to get to know the place that I'm visiting. And then in the middle, you have something like you show up at the hotel and they have a concierge service, and the concierge is there to guide you to different things. But of course, they have their own set of incentives, and they're less likely to show you the hole in the wall place where you can get that really good, rice on mussels or whatever it is. And what I think about is, the issue that you're describing is almost like the first one's easy, right? You can make that one better. You can use Gen AI to make that concierge experience happen better wherever, right? Maybe you can have it in person, but now you can have it digitally, right? Marriott's doing this very well. And they're sort of bringing to light or bringing to digital a whole bunch of different experiences that are more and more personalized. And to the extent that they're using Gen AI to improve that. I think, Alex, what you're describing is almost this other one, which is you're not going to easily replace that a guy experience, because they're going to give you something much richer, much deeper, that I think we've got a gap before any sort of personalization and Gen AI gets there. And I toss in this word personalization because I think that's where Dave mentioned I was just at Adobe Summit, and that is one of the buzzwords of Adobe Summit is personalization. Everybody's tried to crack that nut, and everybody has been trying to crack that for the last 10 years because they know that the more focused you can be in your messaging, your targeting, the more effective you're going to be. I think where personalization falls short is to what you just said, Alex, the amount of context you need to create a personalized experience that is helpful and not just insert your name here and throw in a couple of things. That's the piece that's missing. It's how do you provide a helpful experience so you're not wasting somebody's time to give them what it is they're looking for. And it almost falls in an uncanny valley a lot of the time, where it's personalized. They're really trying hard, but it's not actually helpful. Like you can almost see it trying.
Yeah, I mean, personalization, in other words, is also know your customer. Like, why are telemarketing calls annoying? Because I don't want what they're giving me. Because they don't know who I am. They're not giving me something that I want.
It's about what they want. Yeah,
exactly. It's about what they want. Exactly. So you have a business, side looking for sales, but the customer side is wondering, why on earth are you bothering me? But if you know your customer really well, there's trust there, there's a relationship there, but also, it's helpful. And Ruthie, I think that's nail on the head. I mean, that's the thing, is like, without that context, it's not helpful. With the context, it's helpful.
Right. And I think too, we've talked about this on a lot of other episodes where AI can be very good and very helpful for personalization if you're willing to give up that level of data. And that's what's made Google and Google search so effective for so many years, is because you just stay logged in to your Google account, right? While you search, while you watch YouTube, while you get your calendar together, it knows a lot about you. Whereas, new AI startups is like, well, I don't know. Do I trust them with that? I don't know that I want to trust them with that. Because what happens when you get bought out, or what happens when your product goes bust and you're no longer supporting it, but I still have the hardware device that was the key to using your AI thing, right? Like there's some downstream effects you have to put together. And then the good, the data that goes into it is really, the outputs are only going to be as good as that, right? So that, with your B2B sort of system solution kind of thing, yeah, I mean, you could put that in the copy. The AI would know how to do that, but then it also has to run against whatever database that, hey, these products are related to these other ones, and you can do that, but that technology has been targeted to B2C stuff for so long that it's just not even in the wheelhouse of a lot of B2B marketers right now, because it's a different way of thinking of, let's take on the entire experience, because I was thinking about that the other day. I was using the Target drive up, and it's like, why does Target and Amazon and Walmart are all in the same sort of area where they know a lot about whatever the purchaser is, because they know, okay, they like these drinks, they're Coke versus Pepsi, the less fat cream cheese, but that doesn't make sense because they're also buying donuts. Like, like you can personalize around that stuff, and it's fairly easy for like drive up orders where it's okay, I'm just going to get the stuff that I buy all the time anyway. And then for the, hey, surprise me kind of things, I'll go into store, but again, it depends on what industry you're in too, right? I mean, that's why marketers are always yelled at for saying it depends, because it really does.
I'm thinking about your comment about the complexity of the B2B world, and something Alex had said about how a lot of these personalized or recommended for you type of experiences that are becoming more and more powered by Gen AI, a lot of where they fall short is you might, as a customer, be missing something in that picture. It's saying, hey, recommended with these products. But we've all worked in the B2B space where you're not just buying a single product. You may be buying into a system, or you may be buying a product that works with several other products. And in order for it to work well, you need the collection. And some of the thoughts that come to mind when I'm thinking about this is digital does play a huge role in your ability to sort of explore and understand and learn on your own, whether it's via videos or looking at web pages, et cetera. But then the value of the in-person sales conversation changes to an extent. You've got to have a much higher value sales conversation, or else it's not worth it. It's not helpful to the customer if the salesperson is simply repeating what they already read online, right? To Alex's point, it's providing the additional context of, did you know this about this? Did you know this? You may not have been thinking about it in this system, or getting to know the system, which then changes the role of the salesperson. They've got to be, they're not just repeating back what's on brochures. Now they've got to be the expert on this product set and on potentially what the customer is trying to do with that product set.
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting point about the complexity of the purchase or the interaction. As kind of going back to the Target example too, like sometimes they make use of that data, but sometimes they really don't.
Right.
I mean, I may have bought one particular product the last time I was here, but that doesn't mean that's a repeat thing that I actually want a second time. Like Amazon keeps trying to sell me a subscription, like automatic shipping to me, various products that are single-use products. Like I'll never use it again. Like it was a one-time thing. I used it and it's done. Like, or there's a quantity in it. They're like, oh yeah, every few weeks you could have it again. And it's like, I don't buy it.
What do you think I'm doing? I don't need that quantity of super glue. Like
exactly. I just don't need that much or frequency. Yeah. So there's like a large amount of data. I mean, Heck, I'm struggling with this at work too, because talking about like average sale volumes and, particular industries, what kind of products might they want, what kind of, cart or basket are they looking for, that sort of thing, or, what's their common reorder cycle or related products given their customer type, industry size, whole bunch of other factors. You can kind of think about all that stuff and say, oh yeah, if I got a lead, it would be average value of $187. But that's wrong. Every single lead is different. Some leads are worth $1 million. Most are worth zero, or they're a waste of time. So they're actually negative amounts because they're actually holding your team back because you're getting junk. So that's the thing, is like you start to throw some of these figures and it starts to fall apart in practice and usage. So that's the other piece of like, we collect all this data, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we can take this random person who just showed up and say, I know what you need. You just don't have that quite yet. Or maybe that's just like, getting to a well-quoted thing from Ruthi of a chatbot instead of a website in the future, where maybe that is the purpose with a B2B site, is it starts with questions. It figures out what you need. It gets you down to where you're going, but also gives you some sense of control or enough options to feel like you've explored all the options and you're correctly, get to the bottom of it. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just the e-commerce functionality for certain complexity just doesn't work.
Well, yeah, that's where you get into the whole regulation sets and, whatever else. Sorry, Ruthi, I cut you off.
No, you're good. Hot take on the value of a website. I still think that proprietary chatbots have some potential. I'd put some percentage on that one. I think that's a cool idea, and the idea that you could be speaking with the AI of a particular company about their products and that they could tune it and train it to be better and better about answering the run-of-the-mill questions. Like, that seems like there's a lot of potential there, but the other piece about the value of a website, and this was something that one of the speakers mentioned from a company called Gradial in one of the sessions, just that the value of the website increases as we have more and more Gen AI come online, because it becomes the source of truth for a given company. And I think about the three of us have all encountered or at least heard case studies about counterfeit in China as being a particularly difficult issue, and how oftentimes customers in those countries want to buy direct from the company rather than from a distributor or something. And the reason is because it's really important that they're not getting a counterfeit product. I think of something similar to that in the information world, where the value of going directly to a company goes up because you're getting the correct information. That company's on the hook for providing you the correct information versus what you might be getting from one of the many LLMs out there providing information. Sure, they have the source, but you got to get it linked back somehow.
Well, go ahead, Dave.
Well,
I want to take this in a tech bend, so go ahead.
Okay, I'm going a different way. In preparation for one of my upcoming presentations, I've been revisiting a lot of our favorite presentations from Clayton Christensen and Rory Sutherland, right? And the sort of classic thing that Rory brings up, right, is if you change your perspective, you might find the solution that is actually the solution, even though it's unexpected, right? So if you want to make the trains faster, you have to spend £6 billion and a whole lot of time and years to do so. Or for a fraction of that, you can add free Wi-Fi to the trains and people don't care, because now they can do their work, they can do their homework, they can watch a movie, like whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily matter that they're there faster. So, you have to use the different lenses too. Like if you get stuck using a particular engineering lens, well then, okay, let's go try to find a more creative thing for that. Or, you know, what if we came at it as like an architect instead of an engineer? What does that look like? You know, just as like little thought experiments to break you out of your rut. And I think for me, with the B2B side of things and the struggle for a lot of incumbent B2B organizations, the problem is going to be getting the innate knowledge inside of the organization onto the website in a way that actually communicates without feeling fluffy. You know what I mean? And that's going to be really hard, especially, you know, if you have a lot of science involved in what you're selling, like convincing scientists to step out of the lab to do a blog or a podcast or something, that can be a really heavy lift, you know, but if it becomes part of the culture, then, you know, you have a shot, you know.
I'm going to give you a vision of the future of the internet. Based on this, I think we got it.
Okay.
Because Dave, you're pointing out the exact problems, and Ruthi, you're picking out kind of what the user experience solution is.
Mm-hmm.
I think in between is basically reasoning agents, crawlers with content, and or transcripts or chatbots, like fed data sources that chatbots are working off of. And you would supply that like a closed captioning transcript like you would on a YouTube video, which Google still sees those basically as images, and then pulls from the transcript a whole bunch of content, and now it knows how to rank the video. Without those transcripts, they're pretty lost, to be honest. They're still pretty lost on it. Mm-hmm. Link signals aren't that useful. So I think that's it. Basically, you have to, I mean, that is the key piece there, Dave. I mean, you hit it perfectly, was how do you extract that information out of that company? You got 1 million PDFs, great. You got a ton of web pages that are fluffy, not great. You got a bunch of patents and some references to them, not fantastic. What do you need to do to basically get your arms around that, collect that information, reduce it down to something that's useful, and then respond back with it? So if I'm interacting with a Gen AI product, let's say it's Gemini, let's say I ask Google about this particular B2B situation or whatever, upcoming conferences, you know, whatever. That information that's going to feed back is going to be from the company. And it might be the new SEO job is much more database like focused, much more kind of tech SEO focused, where you're trying to make sure that all the information is indexable, including FAQs, interviews, you know, maybe even transcripts from customer service calls. I don't know. Everything is basically parsed in some way. And that's your job, is to make sure that it's, you know, this crazy PDF is actually could be parsed out, so that these agents can basically collect that information, reduce it down, and then feed it. And whether or not that's on the company side to do the feeding, or if it's going to be really heavy lift on the search engine side to scrape through all this stuff, reason through it, filter through it, basically kind of how they are now, but done way better with the reasoning agents that would basically be re-looking at this information. Because you'd have to look at it from, like you said, multiple angles, like different lenses. You'd have to look at a science company with a very specialized bot that understands the scientific implications of these particular patents, because a patent describes what's going on, but it doesn't describe the problem that it's solving, you know, the situation. That's much more of a case study sort of thing, right? That's marrying in the marketing copy with the patent, and now you have something that looks like a complete helpful solution.
That's always been the problem with big data. Big data is always looking at the past. It's never telling you what's happening right now. It's always, you know, or what could be happening, where you're going. It's only ever what worked previously, which is why I think the amount of creative ads that we've seen since the era of big data came around has plummeted.
Yeah.
Because it's no longer fun, because it's, you know, oh, we know this segment will react positively to this if we show, you know, puppies for 2.5 seconds, and then we do a jump cut to, you know, a toddler laughing on the driveway. Like, shut up. Just come up with good creative. You know, like some of the stuff, you need to tip on its head. I know I've talked about it a lot recently, but Liquid Death, a water company, playing off of the fact that all the branding for water is about life and essence and birds and meadows and all that kind of stuff. No, we're going to flip it. We're going to do a ton of collaborations, and we're going to do something creative and fun. They're killing it. So I think like AI, if you do that version of the internet, you will get to a very nice blah state, right? It'll be nice and average, but then you're going to have your customers go, yeah, okay, I know what you said, but like, I'm different. My situation's different. Help me. And you go, yeah, but actually you represent 80% of our customers. This is what you want. No. I'm special. Which has always been the problem.
Yeah. And maybe actually it's going to get a lot worse, because basically now that you're pulling more reasoned, larger data sets, you're saying, I have a particular problem. Well, here's some things you might never have thought of. And now suddenly the customer base is very different. One of my family members owns a company. It's a long history to it, but dealing with mining equipment and jackhammers and pneumatic tools, right? Standard miners, construction, that kind of group. That's their core customers.
Right.
Then they started getting some calls from surgeons, orthopedic surgeons.
I don't want that. If you're using a jackhammer, I don't want that.
I'm not kidding. It is very hard to move bones during a surgery, and there is a lot of chipping away and work that has to be done with hip plant implants and construction work. And what they were looking for was is how can we basically bag this thing so it's hygienic and use it on a human being? And what kind of size, like, compressors would I need to chip away bone? And they're like, not an expected customer set. Turns out, still a customer set. Been going on for a long time now, well over a decade, that surgeons are buying from them for their pneumatic tools that are also sold to construction workers. Like, that's a
sometimes
really weird...
the less you know is better.
Oh man. There's a whole lot there you don't want to know. Just be thankful that it's a nice surgeon who you wake up and, oh, look, it's better now. Yep. You don't want to know. But this is basically an individual really branching out, right? They're not looking at the regular medical device companies. They've looked well beyond that to finally find this supplier that might fit this need, right? So it's very inventive, which may be the crux of the problem that basically is in the future. That's better you have a reasoning agent, the more options there are. I mean, think of like all the crappy websites that are out there that are, 2 pages and one of them's a contact us page and that's it.
Right.
The more that can be pulled out of that, well, now they're a competitor. And there might be some off the wall competitor for you that you just don't know about yet. So
I think as well,
creativity would have to break through all of that, or inspire those searches and inspire those people to kind of start from those different starting places, which would allow them to discover these things,
right?
Allow them to discover your company. Yeah,
this goes back to something we've talked about in the past, and then also I'll tie it back into an article that Dave recently shared about knowing pain points is the key, right? Those surgeons knew exactly what they were looking for and what wasn't solving their problem, and therefore they took it upon themselves to go find a different solution, right? And so better understanding either your market's pain points, or maybe it's not your market's, understanding the pain points that different customer bases and different marketers are facing opens up your ability to solve for a number of different problems. Or perhaps it's on the flip. Maybe the increasing ability to get information from anywhere allows more surgeons, or insert audience here, to go and find novel solutions to the problems they have so that they can better solve their own solutions. And to your point, Alex, that just increases your competitive set because your customers can go and find novel solutions that aren't yours. The article that it reminds me about is this idea that information and therefore, human's IQ is now less of a value, right? You being intelligent or having a lot of knowledge, like the value of that has gone down because you can have access to information more than you could even with search. And therefore, the important thing now, the currency that matters is agency, somebody's ability to just go out and do a thing, to go solve a problem, to just go do it, or to run with an idea. And there's something to this of that surgeon who reached out to your family member to say, hey, you guys are solving a problem. Like it's that is the thing that's going to drive going forward.
Well, I think I put a larger currency on critical thinking than anything else. I was talking to a lawyer friend, and they said that somebody called them and said, why are you guys saying we have to do this in this particular state? The AI tool is telling me that we don't have to be compliant with that law. And it's like, trust the lawyers. Don't trust the AI bot. It's like there are certain things like that where I would just take it for granted that you wouldn't trust something as important as, how compliant your company is with the laws to a chat bot. Like that. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, brought the mood down. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Ruthi.
Where my mind goes is sort of a couple of different spots. The first is I think about this tension with marketers working with legal or compliance, and over the last decade, I think that relationship has shifted a bit, where it was what the lawyer says go, and it's just this is how it is, where it's been shifting more to it's a bit more subjective. You as the business are sort of assuming the risk. So to the extent that the chatbot is there to sort of lay out here's sort of the range of risk that you might be facing, and then you get to assume the risk, there is some value. Again, to the conversation we had earlier, though, there's a context and there's a complexity that matters, for which having a lawyer might still be helpful. Like, you might still want to talk to somebody because they might see the nuances, or they might, see how judges might interpret it in a different way than a chatbot at this point in time. The other thought that comes to mind, though, is on the other side of that, where critical thinking is not involved in the digital space. Gen AI is taking over, I think, much faster than I had originally anticipated. So if your job involves button clicking based on documentation, and that is it, I do not think you will have a job for very long, either because the rate of outsourcing that type of activity has increased, but now it's real. Gen AI agents are doing this sort of activity, and me as a user of a platform would much rather just use a Gen AI than work even with an outsourced developer on doing those sort of button click activities, because A, it happens faster. B, I have more rapid control over the situation. I can say, hey, set up checkpoints here, checkpoints here. And I think I was a little bit blown away by this last week of just how quickly the ability for Gen AI to be basically software robots has become a reality.
Yeah, I was running an experiment with a friend about a month or so ago, and just to see, because it was, the deep research stuff had just come out, right? And we did basically a UX audit of their company's website in about 10 minutes, instead of the 3 months it would be to, get an agency to do it, tell them about the project, have them go through each of the pages to do a project. and then we threw in some optional extra like SEO stuff about tell us about the links that you find on these pages and how many of them are, this, that, or the other. I was like, oh, damn, this is actually farther than I thought. Like, is it a perfect UX research thing? No, it's not. But does it at least give you some quick hit ideas on, okay, here are some areas we can improve? Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Let me ask you a question on this one. Does it cheapen the output?
Yes.
No.
So you... Yeah, so here's your agency critical thinking like crux right now. So if you were doing this manually, you go through every page, manually writing down on your Word doc, you spend all week and you come up with this thing that you are now probably pretty passionate about, and you are very knowledgeable about all the details because you manually put that thing together.
Yeah.
Flip that. I ask Gen AI to do it. It does it. I get this output right away. Do I care about that output the same way I did before? Will that project actually get fixed? Which one will fix the project or fix the problem faster?
So
one saves time, but it cheapens it.
Here's my analogy onto why I say it does cheapen it. If you think back to your agency days, think back to when you had to go to a client presentation with your manager, and your manager was talking about all the work you did. And of course they messed up because they said, yeah, we saw this, we saw that, Yep. And you're sitting there going, no, yep. I did the work. I know the site. I know what's wrong, right? There's a level of knowledge that cannot happen unless you work through it, right? Yes,
go Ruthi.
guys, and I'm on the client side through and through. I've never been on the agency side.
Sure.
As a client, I don't have to trust an agency now. I can just go do it myself, and I know my system. I can just go fix it. And the reason I said no was less about that. It was more that so Adobe just showcased Gen Studio, which is their way of creating a whole bunch of variations on content that you can just then push out to social media, et cetera. So it's mostly focused on campaign marketing, but the transfer over to web experiences is pretty easy, right? And what they have built in, and Adobe's not the only one with this technology, got it a couple other places, is you upload all of your brand documentation and your brand guidelines. You upload all of your legal and your compliance documentation. So not only are you having bots take a look at like QA, does it have broken links? Is it like created correctly? You also have scores. How close does this hit your brand? How close does this hit your compliance guidelines? And so I think about those things and I go, well, shoot, I'm the client. I already know what it is I want. I know my systems pretty well. I just need people to go do the things. I've already got an idea, going back to the agency idea. I need somebody to go and do it. And now we have these AI agents who can just go and do it. Oh, and bonus points, they're going to get rated on how well they did it compared to your business's guidelines for brand, for compliance. And I'm sure there's going to be more that come out.
Yeah, there's a difference there, though. You're talking about an approval step and the kind of resistance piece is where I was going with the UX question.
Right.
So it's a project that you would have to lead to get it done. If you created the document or the findings manually versus having a Gen AI create it, do you push as hard? Do you get it done? And which one maybe saves you time? Which one gets it done faster? I mean, one of them, you're going to get sunk cost. I mean, cheapen the work, fine. But sunk cost 40 hours already just to create the thing. Like that's a lot of time to get the document together to then champion it and get it to happen.
And if you're already on the client side, right, Ruthi, for your own example, how long did it take you to understand your systems, to understand what your brand guidelines on it, because you lived and breathed that for a very long time and had to have lots of stupid meetings where people said lots of stupid things where you're just like, shut up. Right? That's part of the learning. In order to be able to do something more quickly, you have to know the ins and outs of it. And, we've said this about all of the outputs since, 2023, when we first started talking about Gen AI, was, okay, this is good enough if you don't know what you're talking about. But if you know what you're talking about, you can easily see where this falls apart, And I think the campaign side of things, the reason that's getting so much love is A, there's a ton of marketing spend there. But then B, too, like the main thing is, okay, there is a lot that you can automate there, right? With your brand standards. I'm only ever going to choose this color or green, right? And then you're only going to have 1 or 2 sentences worth of text for a display ad or social posts or whatever else, right? You're not going to have some sort of long convince me kind of thing that might come through. And you might actually want some, agency things. Like it.
I think where our viewpoints very much meet is what's shocked me is the piece about if you have button pushing where the documentation is already in place.
Right.
Gone. You've got robots for them.
Right.
In the form of
entry-level jobs.
Agents. Or in the form of I'm outsourcing a whole bunch of just the hands-on keyboard work. It just needs to be done. I think that there is just, I don't think it's staying around very long. Like the idea that you would hire a bunch of CWs or agencies in order to just do a bunch of what is very tedious manual work, but you have to have the documentation, which means that you have had the strategy up front where you figured out, here's what we're trying to do, here's why we're trying to do it. Now just go and do it. And I think you guys are talking more about that upfront thing of like, you've got to get to the point of knowing what it is that you want to do. And that is still very much outside of the Gen AI world.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, that goes with the use cases, right? I mean, we're talking big sort of incumbent organizations that do a particular thing. Where I've seen the most benefit with Gen AI has been all of my personal projects, right? Because I can just say, hey, I need to accomplish this thing right now. Get me 90% of the way there. I can look at it and say, yep, no, yep, I'm going to change this. Like, that's really, really, really useful, right? Because again, I know what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get it done in a way that allows me to still relax before I go to bed instead of like just shutting off and, trying to fall asleep. Yeah. Always interesting. Clearly, we will circle back to this topic. Thank you for making it this far in this episode. Hopefully you have liked and subscribed. If not, do so. It helps us understand. Thank you to the person who gave us a 5-star review on Spotify recently. And we will see you in the next episode. So take care.
Thanks all.
Cheers.